Hey everybody, it's Ken McElroy here and back at popular request, Mr. Robert Helms with the Real Estate Guys. Robert, what's going on?
Hey, Kenny, good to see you. Hi, Danille.
Hello. Ken forgot to introduce me. So.
I know, I'm going to get in trouble for that one, as you know. Thank you, by the way. I thought about that immediately. So for those of you guys don't know, like Robert and Russ and I and Danille, we've been studying a lot together. I've actually seen you a fair amount in the last 30 days, and your beautiful wife and your family, and Robert is who he is. What I mean by that is he teaches. He's a great teacher, great educator. He invests all over the world, and so today we're going to talk about a few things: investing abroad, housing market predictions. He has a big goals seminar. He teaches syndications. I don't know how many thousands of people you've taught the syndications, but I've spoke at those. I've been on the Summit at Sea. I've been at the Land one and at your resort there in Belize. And it's really great to have you back on.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you. It's always good to see you. And hello to all the folks that are watching.
So, all right. So let's tell everybody a little bit about you started your channel quite a while ago. And I remember at one time you said you were number one on Apple, right?
You know, way back, we were just on the radio, still on the radio today. So we're a podcast. And for many years, we were, I think, the only real estate podcast. But as it's grown, listenership has continued to increase. It's crazy. We're in 190 countries. And every week, something to say about real estate on the radio and on the podcast.
Well, you and we both have a face for radio, so it works out well. Unlike Danille.
Right, exactly. Has the face for TV.
I know. It's true. Well, let's jump right in. Okay. Let's talk about, so especially now, right, with the pandemic and COVID, people are looking at second passports. They're looking at, right or wrong, their administration. I'm going to get the heck out of here. And so there's a lot of stuff happening. You and I were just in Dallas at Simon Black or James Hickman, right? And his event called The Sovereign Man. And this was a topic that kept coming up. And by the way, these are wealthy people and also people that are aspiring to be wealthy and all over the map. People are trying to figure it out. So what are some things that people need to be careful of when they're investing abroad? Because it's kind of a scary topic, right? Like, first of all, you don't think you can. But you've been doing it for years very successfully. So what are some of the things, what are some of the basic things people need to do first?
Well, there are some big differences. The minute you cross over a border, right? Many times when I'm presenting somewhere, I'll say, who thinks it's risky to invest outside of the United States? And a whole bunch of hands go up. And then you say, okay, who thinks it's risky to have all of their economic power tied to one nation's economy and currency? And then a whole nother set of hands goes up. So it's not right or wrong. If you're never planning to leave the U.S., it may be of no interest of you to invest internationally. But what Simon Black calls planting a second flag, or what Doug Casey calls a bolt hole, a place you could bolt to in the middle of the night if you had to, is the idea of just having a place to be in case. Now, that's one side. The other side is, who says the best returns happen to be in the one country you live in? Sometimes we look to other markets and other countries because there's great opportunity. But to your question about the things to look out for, there's a big one or two. We take for granted in the U.S. that we have a very sophisticated, organized real estate system. In most markets, there's a thriving MLS. There's licensed real estate professionals that can help you. The contracts are vetted by the associations for years, whether it's commercial or retail or residential. That's not true when you get outside your own border. There are other great places to invest, but the rule of law is different. The basis of law is different, tenant landlord law and real estate rights. So it takes a little bit of uncovering to start figuring it out, but you got to start with your purpose. Why do I want to invest abroad, offshore? Well, if it's for return, that might be different than it's because, well, I got a place in the world I love to go visit. And what if we could own a home there, vacation a few weeks out of the year, and then rent it out the rest of the time, right? That's a different philosophy. So it all depends on what you're trying to accomplish by going abroad.
You can do both though, which is, that's the interesting thing. It doesn't have to be an either or. Like you can invest in Belize as an example, which you guys have done pretty heavily, and so you do have that as a resource, and you also have an investment abroad, right?
Oh, very much so. In fact, that's probably the typical international investor is someone that owns a place they like to go and enjoy, and they rent it out when they're not there. That's pretty typical. And that's true in Belize, Mexico, a lot of Caribbean places, in Europe, even ski resorts. And so finding a second lifestyle that you like, if it's not like you live on the beach at home, you want to go live in the mountains as your getaway place, right? You know what that's like when you leave the hot summer of Arizona to go someplace cool like Idaho, right? That's the idea of having a couple of residences. And then if you choose to, you could create income from those, whether it's overnight vacation rentals, whether you're part of a managed program, but you definitely can do both.
Yeah, that's very, very true. So if somebody's looking, let's say, to invest in Mexico and they don't know where to look, what to do, what are some of the first things that they need to do?
Well, the first thing I think is to do a preliminary investigation of what real estate purchase looks like at a place. So, for instance, Mexico. In Mexico, there are some unique requirements. Most of the land that's in the more popular places, like near the water or near the Mexican border, you can't own as a non-Mexican citizen. You have to use what's called a fideicomiso or a bank trust, which is a different legal instrument. Again, not good or bad, just something you'd have to learn about. So if I wanted to buy a home in, say, Cabo San Lucas or Acapulco, I would want to learn about the fideicomiso, what that means, how I can approach it, who's the beneficiary and the trustee and the trustor, all those kinds of things. And I'm a big believer of finding a great real estate agent in the market. All the major brands typically are represented in most of the big cities in Mexico, and you can find somebody that perhaps that owns property there, see who they would use, or get a referral from your local agent who might have some inroads into those places. But it starts with education, and I think a trip, right? Go kick the dirt, as we say.
Go check it out. Kick the dirt or kick the sand. I know when we were down in Belize in June, we popped in a Remax. I'm not trying to promote Remax, but the point is to your point, these companies are international, and they have and they have professionals there that are trained in the local laws and kind of the same, those kinds of things. So I would definitely not go it on your own, right?
Oh, it's tough. The reality is right now we're all licensed to sell real estate in Mexico. There's no licensing requirement there. Your taxi driver is likely to be able to sell you a property. So I would recommend just going with someone reputable, whoever that is in the area. In several Mexican markets, we have great agents we've worked with for years who have educated us about what the market's like. Same thing in Belize. We started because we saw an opportunity, but have fallen in love with the people in the country and the lifestyle. And so, the nice thing about Belize, it's English speaking. And so it's kind of like international investing on training wheels. It's very similar to the process we're used to. And that, as you go further and further out of the mainstay, that becomes the big difference. If you're going into a country that speaks another language, like even in Mexico, most of the contracts have two columns, one in English, one in Spanish. Now, the English version is only there to accommodate me, the English speaker. If there were ever to be an issue, it would be the Spanish contract that would prevail. So if I'm going to a country with another language, I just need to understand what the potential liabilities might be.
Right.
Well, and that's a good point too, Robert, because, these governments, here in the U.S., there's, processes we have where the government just can't take your property. But in other countries, especially as a foreign investor, sometimes the rules are a little bit different for you and the government has more leeway.
Well, that's true. We see eminent domain. It happens here in the U.S., but usually not without some sort of just cause. But in a lot of countries, that's not the case. So, there's some countries where you must have a partner who's a citizen of that country in order to own property. And they have to be an equal, or some cases, a 51% partner. So if that's the case and you don't know anybody and trust anybody in that country, well, that's a tough deal. I mean, there's firms that you can hire to be your 51% partner, but that means they have signature authority on the property. So I'm not saying there wouldn't be reasons for you to consider that, but if you're going to do that, you better go in eyes wide open.
Yeah. And then this is very different than if you want a second passport or want to become, a resident, right? So,
Well, there's two parts there. There's residency, which is almost always available to folks who come and buy a second home. There's different requirements in different places. And then in most places, once you're a resident for some period of time, then there is a path to citizenship and a second passport. So many of the benefits of residency are all you'd ever need, but there's also reasons to consider a passport. In a few countries, they have what they call citizenship that's economic, where you either buy a specific property, one that's approved as part of the program, or you make it a donation to a fund. Sometimes it gets paid back with interest over time. And that way you're promoting the economy in the local area, but you're able to get either residency or citizenship. So if you're thinking about going somewhere, I think the first thing you do is get educated about it, go figure it out, visit places you like. We get a lot of people come to Belize who are doing it compared to what? They don't know if they want to be in Costa Rica or Panama or the Virgin Islands. So they're hopping around, checking it out, which I think is a great thing to do.
yeah, it is. It's like anything else. It's due diligence and where do you want to be, and so that's, I think, number one. But the truth is you can. Most people don't think about buying out of the country, and there's a lot of people, like especially Mexico. I mean, I've been going to Mexico for a long, long time, and it's very different, just in my short lifetime from what it was. I went through a currency devaluation down there. That's number one. I remember when they shut the doors and opened them back up and basically took off a zero from their bills. But it's if it's someplace that you want to be. I have a very good friend of mine here from Scottsdale that's actually buying down in Puerto Vallarta right now, and he sold his company up here, and he's gonna do the back and forth for that very, very reason. He told me he found a great neighborhood, safe. It's full of people from all over the world, and so he's made the investment, and they're about ready to move. So you can do it very successfully, but there's a lot of stuff around title. That you have to be very, very, you don't want to just dump your money down there. They don't have a lot of times they don't have the escrows, and they don't have the lawyers and things like that, right?
Yep. And it varies everywhere you go. In Mexico, they use what we would call a notary, a notario, but a notary in Mexico has a much higher stature than a notary in the United States. They don't just notarize your signature. They actually work for the transaction, but they're impartial. They don't represent either the buyer, the seller, or even the brokers. And so that's a fascinating, we don't have an equivalent of that. So it is just getting your mind around it. And, to your point earlier, sure, there are people looking for reasons to go elsewhere. We are having our best sales year ever in 16 years in the country of Belize. And I'm sure we're not alone. People are looking for a second flag to plant or a place to vacation or someplace that they could bolt to in the middle of the night if they thought they needed to.
I know when we were down there, boy, I was impressed with everything. I'd never seen it so busy. There's a lot of people trying to figure this out right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A lot of people it's definitely growing from the last time we were there.
Yeah. And I think people are starting to take a look at, where they're at, where they want to be, and they're just considering other things. So anything else you want to add on buying foreign?
No, the only other thing you might want to consider is the currency risk. So in some markets, you're going to buy in the local currency, but in many, many markets, real estate is priced in the US dollar. It's true for most of Mexico. It's true in Belize. It's true in a lot of the Caribbean. Even though there might be a local currency, you're going to buy with the US dollar. Now, it's not true if you go into, say, Canada or Australia. I have some property in Australia, and part of the concern you have is what the exchange rate fluctuation might be. It happened to work in my favor when we closed, but it could have gone the other way. So if there is going to be a currency difference, you'd want to understand that. And then property management, you know how critical that is, Kenny. It's even more critical when you live thousands of miles away from your property.
Yeah, that's very true. That deal that we did in Zimbabwe didn't really work out for us.
Needed more wheelbarrows to carry all that money.
Yeah, but there are things you guys need to consider. So it's not for the faint of heart. But I will tell you this: there's a lot of good information out there in books and YouTube and podcasts and radio shows that you can learn from before you make that step. So it's not all that scary to do, and I have a lot of friends that do it very successfully and really, really enjoy it. And I think they also like having some assets offshore.
There is that for sure. One of my favorite things to do is to travel without a suitcase. When I travel to a couple of my different houses, I don't have to bring, I got everything I need there, right? So I just have my little carry-on my computer. That's just a personal thing. But having different seasons and different residences and different friends and regular restaurants you go to and those kinds of things that you develop can be a great lifestyle.
Well, the hula skirt doesn't take much room, right?
Not a lot, no.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit. Let's shift over to, kind of the local housing predictions. I know you just got back from the incredible conference in New Orleans, and I'd love for you to talk about that. And because a lot of people are talking about Bitcoin and gold and the housing market and real estate and the interest rates and all that, and they had some incredible speakers there. Why don't you just talk a little bit about what you learned there?
Yeah, this was the 47th annual New Orleans Investment Conference, the longest running investment conference in the world. I've been attending it now for, I think this is my 8th or 9th year. Just went to learn more about the resource sector. Primarily it's oil, gas, gold, silver, those kinds of things. But there's over the years become more of a real estate component. And today, the promoters invited me to be one of the masters of ceremony, and Russ and I get to speak. But it was fascinating. Great people. So James Grant was there. Ron Paul was there. All kinds of big thinkers. And Danielle DiMartino Booth, James Rickards. And so the conversation was around real assets. So it should be obvious to people that listen to you, Kenny, but a real asset is something tangible like real estate. We love real estate, but there's other assets. And a real asset is something that isn't manufactured or created or a derivative. Not that you can't make money in those things, but the paper equity market and bonds and those kinds of things, you just have to get your mind around that. We believe that before you're a real estate investor, you're an investor. And so you better understand some of the terminology in the business that we're in, right? Syndication, raising capital. Most people have their money somewhere. So you better be able to speak to those folks about the bond market and mutual funds and stocks and all the different investments. So I go every year just to get my mind around the different kinds of hard assets there are. And it was fascinating this year, right? There's so much inflation. One of the big, debates is the same one we had on the summit with Doug Duncan, the chief economist for Fannie Mae, is how transitory is the inflation? Everyone's got their different opinion, but at this particular event, the lion's share of folks thought it's not all that transitory. It's probably a big chunk of it's probably here to stay. Or as they say, well, the transitory inflation may be around for quite some time. And so what does that mean, right? And for real estate, it's not bad, right? Inflation means all my properties are worth more. Or does it? Right? If there's more dollars being printed. And the reason, I said to the audience, how many of you are in a housing market that's really hot with multiple offers? And pretty much every hand, people from across the United States and other countries, every hand's up because almost every market is up. Why is that? Because we're printing trillions of dollars. And when you print money, it shows up in real things. It also shows up in places like cryptocurrency. A lot of discussion about cryptocurrency at this conference. Maybe the most meaningful discussion at this particular conference that I've seen them have. They've talked about it in passing, but over $2 trillion in crypto, which I think is a great sign of the fact that people are starting to catch on about all the money printing and where money goes. So we talked about a lot. There's a lot to think about. And again, this is just down that beating that drum of education. If you're not sure about cryptocurrency, rather than just write it off, spend some time getting educated about it. It's a fascinating topic, and we're not hearing the last of it.
Yeah, and I think it's important to maybe take it up another level. What you guys might not realize is that guys like Robert, guys like me, and Danille, we study all of those things. We just don't talk about them a lot. We're kind of known for real estate, but as you know, we're always looking at all those different things and trying to figure out what those experts are saying. Just like you guys might be listening to us, we're listening to them. That's why we make these trips. That's why we go to these conferences, because we don't have it all figured out either. And by, Robert's done a great job of diversifying in real estate just by having real estate in different countries. That is a strategy. But in addition to that, as you start to do those kinds of things, then you can now go to get educated around Bitcoin, around gold, around oil and gas, and all those kinds of things, because you're going to have people that are smart in those areas speaking about those things. It doesn't mean you have to go invest in them. It just means that they're, don't be a one-trick pony, right?
Well, I think that's exactly right. And that's one thing I've always appreciated about you, Ken, is that you just study lots of different things and we all make our decisions. Okay, am I going to invest in it or not? I remember we were having a little conversation with Robert Kiyosaki when he bought his first Bitcoin. And his thing was, hey, if I don't own some of it, I'm not going to pay attention to it. So I'm going to buy a little just so I pay attention. I can look at my wallet and see what it's doing, right? Okay, that's not a bad strategy. Different investments come with different levels of risk. Love real estate, love leverage, but leverage is counterparty risk, meaning there's another party, the bank, that has an effect on my investment. There's another party, the county or city, property taxes that are a counterparty. There's a few investments, not very many, that don't have counterparty risk. Bitcoin has a ton of counterparty risk. Even though it's decentralized, it's reliant on power. Now you can say, well, you can memorize all the numbers in your blockchain, but good luck when the power goes out, right? So I like the metals. If I have an ounce of gold, this ounce of gold has zero counterparty risk. It's my asset and it's nobody else's liability. It's also not an investment. I don't think gold is an investment because it doesn't provide ROI. It doesn't provide cash flow, but it is a hedge. And this is why I think any smart real estate investor has their mind around some of the other investment vehicles as well.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. I know Danille's got some gold and some silver and actually some Bitcoin and real estate. So we are practicing what we're preaching, I think, is the point, all right?
Yeah, definitely. I think you need to be diversified because you need that stable backup to the US dollar. And then you also want to invest and try to make some additional money.
Absolutely. And that's really the thing, is getting back in touch with who you are as an investor, what you're trying to accomplish. Some people are about preservation. They've made a lot of money. Kenny, you and I both know people that have sold companies recently. They're setting on a bunch of money. They're way more concerned about safety and preservation. But if you're younger and just getting started, you're more about, how do I get more cash flow? How do I create more wealth? And both those things can be solved with different assets, but you just have to understand the rules.
Right. Or you can just vote.
That's another potential way to go.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the U.S. housing market, because I know, well, first of all, I think you should pat yourself on the back for some of the educational stuff that you guys do. Can you just talk a little bit about some of the syndication and the goal setting and stuff like that? Because you guys, if you're not following, Russ and Robert, you really need to be, because they've had Donald Trump on, they've had Richard Duncan on, they've had James Rickard on, they've had Robert Kiyosaki on. They have some incredible guests talking about a lot of different things in the episode. So why don't you talk about some of your initiatives and where it's all headed for you?
Well, our motto with the Real Estate Guys is education for effective action, meaning all the knowledge in the world doesn't mean much if you don't do something with it. So that's kind of our big thing. We're not gurus. We're not out there on the circuit. We're not doing the run to the back of the room seminar thing. We used to, when Russ and I were getting started nearly 20 years ago, we did 60 or 70 live events a year. Today, it's about 10. So we'd rather have, more impact and less time. And two of the major topics we teach around are market analysis and real estate syndication, right? Raising capital. So twice a year, as you know, we do our Secrets of Successful Syndication, 2 days on what it takes to be in the syndication business, everything from legal, financial, structure, all that good stuff. And it's a lot of fun because great people come out to that event. We do an event that Russ conducts on sales, not just any sales, but consultative selling. How do you raise capital? It's a sales job, but there's a technique, and there's a lot of great ways that you can help people. You got to view yourself that way. I'm not here to sell something. I'm here to encourage people that need my services or my project or ROI to be able to do that if it's right for them. And then once a year, we do our annual goals retreat, which is completely different than anything else. It's all about figuring out who you are at a core level. Most of us live our lives at a pretty superficial basis most of the time. Hi, how are you? How's the weather? And we don't give ourselves the opportunity to go deep into our heart and soul. And for 2.5 days, we kind of get in state and journal and figure it out. And we set goals in health and relationships and spirituality and economics and business and career. And even we do a 15-minute optional session on real estate goal setting, but it's about more than that. Clarity is your friend. When you have lack of focus, then any deal sounds like a good deal. Any business opportunity seems like it could work, and you flounder around bouncing from thing to thing to thing like a pinball. What having clear goals does is give you laser focus, and you shut out the things that aren't going to propel you forward so you can focus on the things that will.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point. I think what happens, I find with a lot of people, and I didn't initially adopt goal setting until probably my late 20s. But then I realized that I was just kind of floating along, like that feather in Forrest Gump, just wherever the wind blew is kind of where I was with a lot of my habits and a lot of my discipline. And it wasn't until, and by the way, this is January 7th, 8th, and 9th. And they can, we'll put the link up, Robert, if you like.
For the goal setting conference.
Yeah, for the goal setting conference. Thank you. But what it does is it immerses you into making some tough choices. If you can't take 2 days out or 2.5 to figure out what you're going to do for a year, then you got a problem. I think, right?
It's like Michael Gerber's the great book, The E-Myth. You have to take some time off to work on your business instead of spending every minute working in your business. And we get so close to ourselves, our life, our surroundings. Jim Rohn used to say that some people have 20 years of experience doing something and other people have 1 year of experience repeated 20 times. Like if you're not figuring out how to have more, be more, do more, that's really the path. As far as I can tell, we get the one go around. So we might as well do everything we can to make sure that we're living the life we were meant to live.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny, speaking of goals, one of my really, really good mentors, Charlie Dunlap, I originally met him where he was doing a goal for his marriage, 2.5 days, where him and his wife would go away for 2 days, and they would say, okay, what's the plan for each kid? What's the plan for us? What's the plan for our vacations? And they get into very, very detailed descriptions. And he said what would happen, it was I was spending more time on my business than I was on my health and my marriage. And so he would like all of us, we tackle business, we rustle it down, we put a business plan around it, whether it's a real estate deal or a company or whatever. But we rarely put that kind of same discipline and focus around our personal things. It's very interesting.
And how great can your business life be if your home life is failing, if your health is failing? Like we're rounded people and you really do have to focus on it, right? Like when you and I and our boys hiked the hill, that took a lot of physical training. And if you didn't do the work, you didn't make the mountain. That was an astonishing life lesson to me. And today, as I was exercising, I was reminiscing about, I didn't like to exercise that much till that Ken McElroy talked me into climbing Kilimanjaro.
Yeah, I remember when I asked you, like I had done it already, and with my, I took both of my sons when they were 17 to Kilimanjaro. First one was Kyle, and then the second one, Cade. And so what I did is I would ask people that, because as we do get comfortable in our little programs that we have, and I remember asking you and seeing your face and watching your expression, and you're like, okay,
Really, Kenny?
But
okay.
You committed and you did it.
Yeah.
It's and by the way, guys, like, I want you to know that we all have moments like that, right? We all are uncomfortable a lot. The first time I was on stage talking, for the first time Danille and I did a live together.
Yeah.
Right? You remember
Yeah.
that?
Oh yeah.
Well,
Sure.
the guy's like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. She goes like this.
Yeah.
And but now she's like a natural, and so it just takes that one little step, right?
Well, that's true, about anything in life. The first rental house is the hardest. And it just gets easier and easier in anything you do, whether you want to be in front of the room or you just want to be great at spreadsheets or you want to be an empathetic listener. Brian Tracy says anything worth doing well is worth doing poorly at first. You do it, it's clunky, it's awkward, but if you'll just stick with it, right? Those first couple of exercise sessions with my son at 5:45 in the morning didn't go well. But we were committed to the process. We didn't want to die on the mountain. And so every morning we got up and did that, and we got better at it and we got stronger. And then you saw that manifest up on the hill. And it's like, wow. And it's just a great metaphor for that. What you focus on in life tends to happen.
Yeah. And you did it. I mean, we all did it. It's not easy, by the way,
No,
climbing that
no.
darn mountain. Oh my God.
It's not easy, but most things that aren't easy are worth having once you do.
I know. It's one of those things that when you're done, man, it's just like all this, it just rushes over you, this emotion, right? When you hit the summit.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's because it's a very tactile example of putting your mind to something, managing it mentally, which we talked about a lot during the hike, right? And then the physical part and just all of that. Plus, you organized an amazing trip with a bunch of cool guys and their sons. So having that time, not just with our own kids, but with each other's kids was extraordinary. And I think if you approach goal setting that way, like, why not have an extraordinary life? Who wants to be average and ordinary? You can set amazing goals and you can have everything you want in life. You just have to get the plan together to accomplish those things.
I know. I'm in the process of finishing up the Atomic Habits, and I hadn't read it before. And Jerry gave it to me. He's sitting right here in front of me. He said, really think you should read this book. And I was reading last night that the guy's like, when you want to work out, he goes, just put your shoes next to your bed, put your stuff there, and just put it on. And then he said, if you want to go to the gym for 5 minutes, go to the gym for 5 minutes, because it's just a matter of just going. Don't feel like you have to do this big workout, and just take baby steps. And just the process of putting your stuff on and going to the gym and showing up and walking around and stretching or whatever and leaving is part of the process. You don't feel like you have to, take on the mountain when you walk into the gym. And I thought that was really interesting. It's like these small little bite-sized pieces. And I try to, portray that in real estate investing, but that's how you started, right?
Yeah. Just start at the beginning and slowly accumulate.
Yeah, like when you started your business for,
Yeah.
Start with one client.
Well, sometimes when you try to do things too big all at once, it's too daunting, so you never do it, or you don't know what you're doing because you're trying to do it all at once and you don't keep up with it. So I like that. Just
start.
Right? Yeah.
That's such a good point. That's, people are afraid of the big, hairy, audacious goal. And it's like, well, that's so far away. I can never. Why not have some smaller goal to start, right? Remember, we did the panel one year on the summit, Kenny, and it was all of us. It was you on the panel and Kim Kiyosaki and my dad, Bob, and me. And then Tom Wheelwright was there to talk about the tax. But we all started with a small 2-bedroom unit.
Yeah,
all of us.
That's
and
true.
It's like, wow, that's the baby step. And from there, it leads to bigger things. Most people don't buy 600 units the first time. You got to give yourself some time and some space, and you will get better and the numbers will get bigger, but you have to be in the process. Everyone wants to jump to the end of the line, but I'm not sure that's the best way to go.
Yeah, it's funny. And then we all start with nothing. We don't have money. I mean, I know you didn't, I didn't, you didn't, and then you save a little bit of money and maybe you use your own money, but then you're out. So then you have to figure out what's next? How do you get more money? And it's actually a lot more. There's actually a lot more out there than you think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. So much. You guys know that. It's crazy how much. And we're printing tons more all the time. So money is not the problem.
It isn't. No, it's actually what you see, and the people you hang out with. And I know you used to study and met with Jim Rohn when you were younger, and our friend Kyle Wilson. And one of the things that I've watched Danille do, and I've certainly done, I know you do, is we actually do protect like our circle of friends pretty tightly. It's kind of a coveted circle, because what happens is we all go through times where things aren't good. Yeah, right. And you need that kind of that support system, right? Can you talk a little bit about what Jim Rohn taught you there?
Yeah. So Jim was amazing. I had the great fortune to study with him for many years. He rarely endorsed books, but he endorsed our book, which was just amazing. But Jim just had a very matter-of-fact way. He was probably the first guy I heard that say success leaves clues. And, it's lots of great Jim Rohn quotes. Jim Rohn says that the book you don't read can't help. Wow. He also says that the person who doesn't read has no advantage over the person that can't read. So he was big into reading. He was big into journaling, taking notes, and that circle, the associations, what you're talking about is so critical. Your life is made up of who you hang out with, right? He used to say that you will become the sum total of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And he would say that you could limit your association with certain people. Maybe there's someone in your life, lifelong friend, maybe even a family member, that when you're with them, you're not at your best. You don't feel good afterwards. He says, well, don't just cut them out, but you might, instead of spending 2 weeks with that person, maybe spend a weekend. You can limit your association. And then, of course, you can increase association with people that are going in your direction. And that's, I think, the power of having a tribe, right? People that have your back. And to your point, Ken, a lot of us have gotten to the point where we're vulnerable enough to be open to discussing our failures and challenges. And by doing that, it's not only is it therapeutic, but we all learn from each other. I mean, you can learn from somebody else's success, but boy, you can learn from other people's failures as well. And you're never going to get out of failing. If your goal is to not fail, well, good luck with that. That's not the point. The point is, how fast can you get back up when you fall down?
Yeah, it's very, very true, right?
Definitely, yeah.
So, as we wrap up here, what's the best way for people to reach you? And I know if you guys are looking to raise capital, if you're looking to get your team together. When I've spoken at your events, so many now. The syndication events, you have hundreds of people there. At the goal setting events, certainly the cruises when you had those, and the one on land, you have quite the following. And one of the things I love is these are all market movers. These are all people that are doing things. These are all people that started with nothing. And these are all people that are trying to make a difference, and they're trying not to spoil their kids, and they're trying to invest, and they're trying to figure stuff out, and they're trying to curb inflation. They're trying to get passive income. They're trying not to be reliant on one source of revenue. The same kind of stuff we're all fighting. And so what's a great way, Robert, for people to reach you and stay in touch with some of the programs you have?
Probably the easiest is just to go to the website at realestateguysradio.com, realestateguysradio.com. You'll see our events tab, which is events we're speaking at, events that we produce and promote. And then we've got a YouTube channel, of course, and that's always good to be able to see and hear, although we're a lot more audio guys, as you alluded to earlier. But if you go to realestateguysradio.com, you can learn all about what we do and how we do it. Get on our mailing list, and we'll send you all kinds of cool propaganda.
Yeah. And don't forget about your podcast too, because I think there's some really, really good insight there too, right?
Yep.
Well, thanks for that. And thanks for always graciously sharing. Pretty much every time we ask you to chime in on the podcast, you do, and it always makes it better. So, and thanks for having me today.
I love teaching. I know you do. So let's keep having fun. As long as it's fun, we're going to keep going.
That sounds good to me. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Danille, great to see you. And Kenny, it's always good seeing you.
Yeah, you too, bud. Good
All right.
seeing you guys.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye-bye.
See ya.